Good afternoon, everyone. Looks like it's 3:30, so I will like to call the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Subcommittee to order. Item 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Item 3 is delegations. We don't have any scheduled. Item 4 is the report of the events coordinator. So 4.1 is a request for exemption from the noise control bylaw for the hub, Stratford's 5th year anniversary. So I don't know if Allison is there to speak to this.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, staff have been approached by management of the hub Stratford for an exemption from the noise control bylaw for their 5-year anniversary. The event is scheduled to take place on their rooftop patio on Thursday, July 1st from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. As is standard process, organizers delivered notices to businesses and residents within 120 meters of the event location, and there were no comments received. A notice was also issued in the town crier, and the city did not receive any comments there. So the intention of the noise exemption would be to permit noise produced by live performers and to permit the operation of loudspeakers and amplification of sound, as well as the operation of musical instruments. The staff recommendation is that approval be given to the request from the hub Stratford for an exemption from the following provisions: unreasonable noise, Schedule 1, Clause 8, the operation of loudspeakers and amplification of sound, Schedule 2, Clause 2, the operation and use of musical instruments, Schedule 2, Clause 17, and this would be subject to the applicable provincial orders and public health guidelines in place at that time.
Thank you. Does anyone in the committee have any comments or questions, or would someone like to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Seban moving and Councillor Gaffney seconding. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous.
Hold on. I wasn't seconding.
Oh, sorry.
I had a question, but I don't like asking until it's on the. It's
okay. Okay, let's go back.
So sorry, Madam Chair. Just one thing. I'm guessing there's not going to be any other events downtown in relation to Canada Day this year.
Allison, do you have an answer to that? Are we planning any Canada Day events?
Through you, Vice Chair, there are discussions in the works to plan a virtual event. That would be the safest way to provide an event, just due to the scale of Canada Day. And as most of you are aware, we will also have the downtown alfresco tables in Market Square. That location can be a little bit tricky just due to the location. So as I mentioned, there were discussions looking at various alternatives, and the solution to move forward was a virtual event. So that's in the works right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion that was moved by Councillor Seban. Do we have a seconder?
You don't need one.
We don't
need one, right? I forgot. Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 5 is the report of Acting Director of Infrastructure and Development Services. 5.1 is the passive house standards and net zero ready homes. So it was a report prepared by Ed. Not sure if he's there. There he is. If you'd like to speak to it, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, this came out as a result of a motion that was passed by the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee to look at implementing net zero ready homes and offering a reduction in development charges and property taxes to help offset some of the upfront costs. So, staff did look at what's involved with constructing a net zero ready home, what other municipalities were doing. So it talks about some of the things that is required to have a net zero ready home. Some of it is being ready to accept solar panels, triple glazing of windows, additional insulation, etc. So some of that was covered in there to meet those standards. As we talked about, it's not something that we can require builders to do. It has to go by the Ontario Building Code. That is what controls how buildings are to be built in Ontario. So if people wanted to improve, if there wanted to be improvements to the code, they would have to lobby the province for that, because they're the ones who control, who take input in through the Ontario Building Code. And so what's interesting is that the federal government did do a study on net zero ready homes and some of the issues that they found. I did attach the report from them. Some of the challenges in having contractors who are able to build net zero ready homes or net zero homes. There aren't that many in Ontario, and there's only a couple nearby that were identified through the Canada Home Builders that were had done all the courses necessary in order to build a net zero or net zero ready housing. So there are a number of issues still with it. It's not a lot of people are doing it. There's not a lot of homes being built in Ontario right now at the moment. What's going on in Toronto? They've adopted some standards. Town of Whitby has adopted voluntary green standards, so they're trying to work with builders. Did come across an article where one builder was doing it, and it was interesting to comment. They weren't sparing any costs in order to build the home, but they did say that there was a lot of cost in order to build one of these homes. And I think in the report by the federal government, it gave a price of about at least $16 per square foot in order to make a home net zero ready. And the savings that you could save from a gas heated home was about $400 per year. So that results in quite a long payback. And they did identify some issues. Is there a market for this? Will people understand what the issues are? So in order to look at the finance side of it, we looked at what the average taxes for new homes that are being built in Stratford. They're coming out to about $5,400 a year. Our current development charges for a single family home is just under $15,000. So when you add the two, you're looking at about a $2,000 grant potentially at that 10% mark. It wouldn't cover off. It'd only be a small grant with respect to the costs involved in order to make a home net zero ready. We also identified the need to meet with local area builders to talk about this. That was something that they did in Whitby to try to get some support for it. So we would have to engage Saba and their builders to see what they would be prepared to do, what the potential costing would be, and what the market would be for something like that. So that kind of sums up where we're at. As we've recommended it, if this is something that Council wants to do to develop a green standards policy, there would be some assistance required because it's a fair bit of work involved. And then we'd have to look at potentially budgeting monies in the 2022 budget to offer a grant program. And we'd be looking at something like a community improvement plan to do something like that. So that's a summary of the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions besides me? I will say that I did quite a bit of research because I am a member of the Energy and Environment Committee, and we were discussing it there. And I really do like the idea of the passive housing and setting that as a goal. And as the report states, it's quite a high goal, and to get there might be a huge leap. But it would be a great long-term goal. And when you look at the Whitby green standards that they've introduced, it's actually a tiered system. So the first tier right now, I think the first tier is mandatory. So they're just a few small things that are required that are in addition to what they're allowed to require as a municipality, in addition to what the building code standards are. But their plan is that over the years, the different tiers would be become required. So what's tier 1 right now, the requirement would shift to tier 2 in say 3 years, and then 3 years subsequent to that. So, and their final tier, which is the 4th one, is actually passive house or net zero standard. So the idea is that they would build their way up to that while working with developers and so on. My question actually for you, Ed, is that do you foresee that we would have the capacity within our own staff to be able to create the green development standards, or would we need to get a consultant to help us do that?
Through the chair, I think we need some assistance. When I looked at Whitby and the staff that they had in their planning departments and all that to do it. I mean, you know, they're larger municipalities, so they had more staff that that worked on this. And I think where the challenge is, you're going to have meetings with the development community and the local area builders when you look at it. And you're right. I mean, they have that multi-tier level, and really we're already at tier 1. When we looked at it, planning staff looked at it, that they said, yeah, we're at tier 1 right now. It's those other tiers and trying to get developers to do that. And what are the cost implications? You know, we're having those challenges now, and we talk about affordable housing. What are the cost implications for doing something like this? How much are you adding to a typical home, and those type of things? So all that's got to be looked at, and as you said, it may take several years to get there. But I think there's a lot of outreach and dealing with the public in something like this.
Right, Kathy?
I'll move the recommendation to refer it to the 2022 budget, but then I'll also make a comment in terms of if you're looking at just the flat out cost and return on investment, you know, just for cost, that may not be a driver. But as we move forward, and there are more and more incentives for reducing greenhouse gases as new carbon tax escalates over time, that if we may want to have this in place and be ready for when both the financial costs and also the public interest flips to wanting to do more of these. And so in some ways, I view this getting ready and having the tiered system as creating the conditions that would allow us to move quickly once other things come online, which I suspect will over the next, certainly over the next decade.
Dave, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add as a comment, and as Chair of Finance, that when we get into discussions about giving discounts to any project or idea, that it's the rest of the taxpayers that have to take up the slack, or we start looking at cutting programs. I'm just saying that there's costs in more than one way. Thank you.
Okay, so this recommendation has been moved. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. On to item 6, the report of the Manager of Environmental Services. 6.1 is the update of the sewer policy. And we have the manager right here who can walk us through the report. Thank you.
Through the chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So the City of Stratford has in place policies that were adopted by Council last December in regards to our sanitary service subsidy program, some general requirements, and then some specifics on it. So the new policies have been great. We've had several residents use the subsidy already for different things, sewer replacement, sewer relining. So it's been excellent so far. We just had a couple of little things in a few of the subsections that we just wanted to clarify because there was just some misinterpretation between some residents. The first one is in section 1.8.4, subsection 2. Public drain connections will be supplied to each property at city cost. Now, this is in a situation where 2 homes share one common sewer service lateral. So they each have an individual pipe coming out of their house, but then they converge into one pipe, which goes out to the sanitary sewer. So we just wanted to clarify that when this situation exists, that the public drain connection will be supplied to the home that does not have the common pipe on their property. So when the two pipes converge, the common pipe will be on either one property or the other. So it's just to clarify that we're only going to be supplying at city costs a new public drain connection to the home that doesn't have the existing pipe on their property.
Dave?
Did we see some of that over on Redford Crescent?
It's possible. I would have to redirect that maybe to Ed Dulovic. Just I started here after Redford came on, but it is possible unless I can speak to it.
Yeah, through the chair, not on Redford. It's not that old of a neighborhood. Where we're seeing this is in neighborhoods that are considerably older. I think, as Mr. Bowes might notice, I think we're talking homes that are close to 100 years old, where we're seeing some of this. We're seeing some of these challenges where, some person is servicing through some other person's home through the backyard. And it was just easier to do. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Like, they did a handshake deal at the time and they got it done, but nothing was ever recorded. And here we are 80 to 100 years later, we're dealing with some issues. So it's in the much older neighborhoods that we're seeing this.
Thank you.
Kathy?
And I know of one that, contacted me about this happening. Do we actually have a mapping of where these exist, or are these things that we suddenly realize exist when somebody needs to have work done, or they're having backup and the plumber comes along and says, what do you know? You're sharing a line.
Through the chair, yes, we do have some identified properties that do have this, and it's come across in the past. If we were doing locates or if there was a reconstruction project going on, we may have stumbled across it. Our repository doesn't really have specifics to all the properties in town. That would entail a very comprehensive review of existing records, plumbing records that date back, like Mr. Dulovic said, 100 years or so. But you are correct, though. The most times that these are being identified is when there is a backup. A sewer backup, and all of a sudden, two properties call in with a sewer backup, and they weren't aware. And typically, the homeowners aren't aware that they have this scenario, unless maybe at the time of purchasing the home, they go through the effort to find all that historical data on the servicing agreements that are in place. But it is typically the older neighborhoods where we're seeing this. So to rectify it, because our new specs are that each property needs to have its own sanitary service laterals. So when we do come across these where somebody is wanting to use a subsidy program to replace and upgrade their sewer, that's when we will supply at our cost up to property line. But that being said, one of those homes will have already a pipe in place. So we just wanted to clarify through the wording of the policy that home has a functional pipe, most likely, and that we're not going to replace that and put a new one in. It's just going to be for the other property.
So I had just a follow up. So is that one of those buyer beware kind of situations? Like the city's, if it's not obvious, if it's not shared during sale, if that's not something that, there are things that have to be disclosed on sales and, agreements, but is this just something that, they deal with privately if they have an issue with suddenly realizing they have a cost associated with having bought a house?
I think it's difficult right now as well. Myself, just having purchased a home in Stratford in January, and considering the way the market is right now, unfortunately, a lot of homeowners don't have the luxury of time, and they don't have the luxury of, you usually get a 3 or 4 day window to decide if you're going to purchase a home or not. So to go through the process of contacting building department, engineering department, the county office, also to get the survey records and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, given the climate of the real estate market right now, people are, I don't want to say buyer beware, because it is information that, they are entitled to, but at the same time, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that opportunity right now. So hope that answers your question.
It does. It's one of those, I think, years ago you could have an inspection, you had time to look at everything, but I can see now where you have bidding wars and a set date for. I'm just wondering if there's a potential for the city getting dragged into any kind of difficulties between buyers and sellers, or if we're clear on that.
So yeah, the city, because a lot of this stuff has to do with private plumbing. So, and again, these are pre-existing plumbing records that predate a lot of us. And, you know, like Mr. Duluc said, there's some sewer laterals that will go through a neighboring backyard. And although, you know, we have certain bylaws in place that, you know, say that houses need to be individually serviced, that sort of thing, when it comes to people having sewer pipes going through backyards and stuff like that, that's beyond city property. So a lot of those times that becomes an internal discussion between homeowners and property owners to kind of arrange that. But the city, certainly, we've come across those situations, and we're here to provide guidance, suggestions, you know, within the confines of our bylaws and our policies and that sort of thing. But ultimately, yes, a lot of the time these are private issues because it results in private plumbing beyond the property line. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any
Uh,
other comments?
Yes, through the chair. Sorry, there was a second part of that,
Okay.
the policy that I just want to speak to quickly. It was section 1.10.3. This refers to the when someone has their sewer lateral relined and they use that the relining subsidy. The wording right now is that the city will be responsible for 50% of the total cost. So the subsection is going to be updated, or requesting to be updated, that it's a little more specific, where it says the city will be responsible for 50% of the relining portion of the work. And the reason why we need to clarify this is because sometimes, in order for someone to have their sewer pipe relined, they need to do some internal plumbing work, some upgrades to the private plumbing within their homes in order to even be able to use the technology. And since they have to do enhancements and upgrades on private plumbing that the city doesn't own, we just wanted to be clear that, you know, for that sort of work, that'll be on the homeowner to prepare and make sure their plumbing is able to do it, and then we cover 50% of the cost of the actual process. And then there's also this work comes with warranties and sometimes restoration, private locates, and these are all costs that the city should not be incurring. Those should be on the homeowner.
Thank you. Dave?
I'll move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just to add, I find it an interesting conversation. The first home that I owned in Stratford did actually have one of those shared sewer pipes. And I don't think we let the people that bought from us know afterwards. So maybe I'll ring them up now and let them know. Anyway, all in favor of the recommendation? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll move on to 6.2. Which is the Stratford Water Pollution Control Plant Annual Report. So Johnny, maybe you can speak to that again.
Yes, through the chair. So yeah, the Stratford Water Pollution Control Plant, as you may know, is owned by the city, but operated under contract by the Ontario Clean Water Agency, otherwise known as Aqua. So every year, Aqua, as part of their environmental compliance approval through the Ministry of Environment, has to submit an annual report, very similar to the one I presented, I believe, last month for the water side of my department. But so this is just a report that summarizes the operation of the plant for the year. It reports on any activities that occurred at the plant, and also makes note that they met all the compliance approval requirements. So they just to basically say they treated all the water to fulfill the expectations of the ministry. There's a few key points in here that I just want to think are worth pointing out. So the flows last year were about 13% less than the year before. And after confirming with Aqua and their weather station data, this is basically a result of less precipitation in 2020, less snow melt. We had a much lighter snow year in 2020 than we did in 2019. There was 5 overflow events last year. So an overflow is when there's a surcharge of water that comes in that the plant is above capacity. So they have what's called equalization storage tanks, where it diverts the water that it can't treat during that rain event, and it basically holds the water there, and then adds it chlorine to it, and then it dechlorinates it before it discharges into the river. And then the report lists the capital projects that they went through last year, and yeah, more or less just a summary of all the to show that they met all the requirements through their ECA, and all the reporting requirements were met to the government as well.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? Kathy?
I just had a question about the inspection. So I noticed that in there they said that the Ministry of Environment hadn't inspected since 2016, I believe, and the Ministry of Labor 2018. Is that usual to have that much time between ministry inspections, or is that something? I'm just wondering if that's new. I don't remember that. I mean, I read these every year, obviously, but I don't remember that gap in inspections.
Through the chair, so I'd have to confirm if there is an actual frequency of inspection that the ministry has to conform to as far as wastewater treatment facilities. Now, the water side of things is much different. It's, I wouldn't say more stringent, but there are a lot more regulations in place, inspections and protocol to deal with drinking water than there is with wastewater treatment, which is why we have much more intense inspections, audits, internal audits, third-party audits, and this is all annual. So the water side of things is a much more condensed version of that, whereas the wastewater plant, it is likely that they don't have the same inspection frequency that water does. But I would have to confirm that, and I could certainly get back to you on that with if there is an actual is it every 5 years it has to have an inspection from the ministry? Is it every 3? I would just have to confirm that.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes it could be just if they're submitting all of their reports and there's red flags, perhaps like they may pick and choose based on reporting. But I was just curious. I mean, if you have that information sometime, that'd be great. But
sure, no, that's no problem. I can follow up. Thank you.
Would someone like to move the staff recommendation? Kathy, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Okay. Item 7 is the capital project update. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm glad to be back. And I look forward to serving the residents and council of the city of Stratford going forward. And on my second or third day, I'll do my best to give you an update of where the department stands. Most of the 2020 capital reconstruction projects have started restoration work. So there's soil repairs, seed, sod as required, and some minor construction repairs being done. The Queen Street trunk storm sewer, the electronic open house is soon to be put online for residents in the area to comment on what is being proposed for later this year. The electronic open houses that we have been hosting have been fairly successful in the sense that we've had a good feedback from residents. We've had a high volume of people actually looking through the drawings. The billboards that we normally have in our in-person open houses is just now made available online, and we have been getting good feedback from residents in those areas. Asphalt resurfacing from 2020. Just the one thing I'll mention in regards to Lone Avenue. Currently, we're working with Canada Post to address some of the mailbox locations. There needs some adjustments so that they can optimally work with their drivers. So we're working with that, and hopefully in the next week or two, we'll have those adjustments in place so the residents can start receiving their mail again closer to home. Asphalt resurfacing 2021. The open house will also be online. We intend to have tenders out for May for summer construction. This includes Romeo Street North from Arden Park to the Court Drain, as well as Romeo Street South from Norfolk Street to Lorne Ave. And I'm sure a lot of residents will be appreciative of those improvements when they come. I'll touch on sidewalk projects. This year, the 2 larger chunks that we're doing will be West Gore from St. Vincent to John Street. So that's the section where the hospital is, as well as Mornington from McCarthy to Graff. Design is ongoing. Hopefully we'll have tenders out in about a month from now. Argyle Street and Mackenzie Street reconstruction. The tenders were recently just submitted, so staff is reviewing that, and we'll report later regarding those outcomes. TJ Dolan Multi-Use Trail. We have tenders are in, being reviewed by staff, and we're just waiting hopefully for a funding announcement before proceeding with that. From the development side, the development and building and planning divisions are quite busy right now with both permits and formal consultations. I know planning is dealing with over 20 formal consultations as we speak, so it should be a good summer once we get going. I guess the other thing I'll mention is this year for the sidewalk inspections, I expect to see a small robot out in our city streets. This year we've decided to do a pilot to try Top Hat Robotics, which will basically provide the same information that we normally get and provide it in a nice convenient way to make work orders for our staff. In terms of the water department, our communications officer, Mike Bates, has been pretty good at getting out the communications for ongoing hydrant flushings. There has been some discoloration calls that have come in, and we just remind residents to flush their taps until the discoloration is removed, and that should resolve the problem. In terms of the wastewater pollution control plant, Johnny is already, Mr. Bowe is already speaking to that. And in terms of public works, the Public Works Department is nearly complete the first full round of sweeping, street sweeping. So we'll expect to see that around your city streets, as well as they're out and about doing sod damages and repairs. So we're addressing the winter issues that we've caused, and hopefully that'll be rectified in the near future. And that's my high level.
Great, thank you for that. Anybody have any questions or comments? Dave?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome back, Taylor. Just a quick question. What's going on with the dam at John Street? There was a crew there this morning digging away around where the gates used to be. I don't know if Upper Thames may be looking to put the gates back in, or I see Johnny's popped up there. Maybe he's got something.
Through the chair, I'm not sure if Taylor has been made aware of this. I just got an email this afternoon about it. So there was quite a bit of debris right where the water meets the overflow at the dam there. Logs, sticks, probably bicycles. I'm not sure, but so they contacted, Upper Thames came, cleaned out as much as they could, and they left some of the bigger debris there for our city staff to come collect. So that's why they were working there recently.
Okay, thanks. I thought maybe they were looking to put the gates back in or something. So thanks.
If there are no other questions, I had a quick one actually about the discoloration of water. I saw a comment from somebody saying that even though the work or the hydrants weren't being flushed in their area, they were still getting water discolored, and it's been lasting for 3 days. They had some theory that they were on the end of some kind of service line, that might cause that type of problem. Does that sound realistic? Or do you know why a single resident would have a 3 or 4 day in a row problem with the discoloration?
Maybe I'll let Mr. Bowes to speak about this. We just had that conversation recently, but he'll be the best to address it.
Thank you.
Yes, through the chair. So the spring flush typically is a little worse than the fall flush because there's been a longer period of time between the fall and now when we flush, as opposed to now and the fall. That being said, the age of a lot of the water mains and the fact that they're cast iron can sometimes cause what's called transients, where it's basically, there's flushing going on at one end of town, but we also have different pumps running at different wells, which can sometimes cause the main to stir up, even albeit, several blocks away, it still can occur. And unfortunately, yes, it's just the condition of the water mains and the high iron content. It's an issue and will continue to be an issue. That being said, we do have a unidirectional flushing program that we're working on with Jacobs Consulting right now. So The plan is to launch that new flushing program in 2022. There is a lot of prep work that has to go into it that we have to do this summer before we can actually proceed with it. But we're going to do a pilot section of the city for that, hopefully in the fall. And then the plan is to launch the new flushing program, which we think will mitigate some of these transients that we think are happening. So again, it's a common occurrence in the city. And, as Taylor mentioned earlier, we just request that customers, flush as much as they can, make sure they flush all their lines. And of course, there's a lot of factors at play. There's homes that don't have water softeners. There's certain homes that have, different filtration systems, reverse osmosis systems built into their internal private plumbing. So there are different scenarios, and it's hard on a case-by-case basis why one neighbor would have it, one might not. But sometimes that's a reason, is because some people have different treatment systems, iron removal, filters, that sort of thing. So hopefully in a roundabout way that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Does anyone else have any capital project update questions? I'm wondering, we don't actually have a new business section. Is this the best time where we could talk about possible other things? Actually, I had just a couple of items that I wanted to follow up on, but I was wondering if anybody else had anything they wanted to mention first. No? Okay. One of the things that I wanted us to talk about was Lakeside Drive. So I've heard from, I think, 3 people in the last month about speeding along Lakeside Drive. One of the individuals is very concerned about the swans. She's actually sent me several videos showing the swans. They sit right on the edge of the road, like basically on the curb, and there are people kind of roaring by in their cars. So that's one concern is for the wildlife, and because they don't quite cross the street in the same way that people do. And then someone else was talking about an excessive amount of motorbikes that seem to be riding there on weekends, which is they felt it was a safety as well as a noise disturbance. They saw motorbikes actually passing cars that were driving the speed limit, and they were deking out and passing. So I'm just wondering, I know that we did have a report last year, so I guess I'm inquiring as to what the progress of that report might be to tackle sort of the speeding issues. And in combination with that, this topic is bound to come forward as well about the closing of Lakeside Drive for weekends. And my thoughts are that it was successful last year, but if we can come up with something that might work to control the speeding and maybe doesn't completely close down the road on weekends, maybe we can have a temporary project. My thought would be to see if we could make it a one-way. I think that was one of the suggestions last year. But that would require some purchasing of concrete barriers and so on. But taking that section of Lakeside Drive that we closed last year, so starting at Waterloo and then going over to, I forget what street it is that goes up right by the festival, and maybe creating a one-way lane. And then the other lane that would be freed up, that would be on the north side, could be used as a multi-use trail. I do think that would slow people down. There might be some other measures that need to take place, but the thing I like about that plan was that all the parking would remain and people would still be able to drive through the area. So yeah, I guess my question is perhaps for Ed is, do you know the status of the report that we were going to have on Lakeside Drive?
Yeah, through the chair, with the staff shortages, unfortunately, did put us behind. It is on our list to do. Just to go back to your first comments on speeding, I know I've been passing those things on to the police, because the police have said in the past, if you're having issues of people say not stopping at stop signs and those things, let the police know. Just had one last week where someone asked, and the police said they'll up the patrols in that area. They can do that as well, because Lakeside Drive is posted at 30. It's unfortunate that you have people just don't follow the speed limit, and that becomes an enforcement issue. So that's something that that can be passed on to the police, and they will increase the patrolling. So I'll follow up with Taylor. It is on the list, and it was on the list of information that was provided to him, but I'm sure he's inundated with a lot of stuff right now. But some of the things to look at, what can we look at to try to get people to follow the speed limits, follow the signage that's out there. That's a constant challenge, not just on Lakeside Drive, but we're finding throughout the city where we're seeing challenges that residents are reporting. And it's unfortunate that you're trying to modify people's behaviors as they're driving, and that's a challenge.
Thank you. Yeah, agreed. Just thinking about the Lakeside Drive, the weekend closures. If we do look at doing that again, I think we should probably reach out to the festival to see what their thoughts are, because they are going to have a season in which they would probably want people to have access to parking. However, noise would also be a factor, I would think, in the presentation of their place. So if we are going to look at closing Lakeside Drive on weekends, as we did last season, maybe we can, I don't know, do we need to make a motion to bring that idea forward again, or I don't know. And as chair, I can't make a motion today, I don't think. Any thoughts, Kathy?
Rather than, do we want to just refer back to staff to come back to us with how the road closures went last year? What was the usage like? Maybe they can reach out to the festival and see where they're at, and maybe bring a report back to us in maybe for next month for consideration, and some options for us. That, I think that would be, maybe I'll move that we refer for a report back to us.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Anybody not in favor? No. Okay, thanks. That carries. The other item that I had written down, I attended last week's Energy and Environment hosted the students from the high school, and had a really great presentation for Earth Day. One of the items that they mentioned was the amount of garbage and recycling along Foreman, again, between where the students get their lunch and where the students go to school. So, and I know we had this conversation last fall, and I thought perhaps that there was going to be more garbage, or we were going to look at putting more garbage and recycling bins, perhaps along Foreman. And I just was inquiring, perhaps it's again, Ed, if we know the status of that project, if that's something that's going ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, I know the school was getting the kids to pick up some of the garbage. I think it improved for a while, but it seems to have fallen off again. I know staff did do a review of it and the potential of locating some waste receptacles on there. I think Taylor can follow up with Adam, Ryan, and I know Quinn Malott was involved with that as well. So they'll have some information on it. So if it's a problem, we could look at. We did have a plan in place if needed, where we could have installed some additional waste receptacles. So Taylor can follow up with Adam, Ryan, and look at what we can do there.
Great, thank you. I actually was driving along there the other day, and there is a church just along the north side, and there's a set of mailboxes that it just occurs to me that would be a great place to have hopefully also recycling as well as garbage receptacles. Does anyone else have any questions about the capital project update or anything else? Item 8, we have advisory committee and outside board minutes for your information. Next subcommittee meeting is on May 26th at 3:30. And item 10 is adjournment. Would someone like to move that? Danielle? And all in favor? Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.